preliminary report within a couple of hours led me to put the warden and the Secretary of Corrections on administrative leave. 2 days later, there was the warden and the deputy warden were relieved of their jobs, and we are continuing to evaluate leadership changes. We're continuing to address the concerns that we have heard from employees from listening sessions that we've held since then, and those include everything from salary policy, vacation policy, training, gear, also shift length and overtime pay, and what we can do to adequately staff the facility in a way that allows them some quality of life too, because that's a big concern for a lot of them, is that we've been shorthanded for a period of time, and they would like to see mandatory overtime to be ended. But with that, I know you all have some specifics. I'll let you ask questions based on what questions that you have.
I have a two-part question.
Sure.
A question and a follow-up. Beginning in 2016, our Kilowatt News investigations exposed all of these same kind of problems in all the facilities throughout the state. Are you conducting internal investigation and reviews on all of the prison facilities or the DOC facilities, or just this one?
Yes, all of them. And we have had a salary policy review proposal ongoing for many, many months already. We knew that was something that needed to be addressed because we aren't staying competitive with our county jails and other areas that we have those in the corrections facilities and keeping that kind of staff. We also last September or August, I believe, did the national campaign for law enforcement officers and correctional officers, asking people to come to South Dakota and be a part of this state and move their families here. We had around 900 applications from 41 states then, and some of that addressed some shortages we may have, but we still have a real need for individuals to fill job positions as well.
So my follow-up to that, I'll let you get to your question. Would the budget surplus be used at all to raise salaries, to increase benefits, or any idea for that?
We are going to use part of what we can to meet short-term needs, but salary policy has to be ongoing revenue. So that's part of what we have with the employees too, is that salary policy is a commitment the state is making on a long-term basis, and I need to know that that revenue is going to be there every single year too. So this year's budget surplus could potentially be used as one-time monies for gear, extra training, maybe bonuses for staff to meet some of those needs, and those are all items that we'll be starting to announce next week. But as far as a long-term fix on that salary policy, we're going to the investigation. So it wasn't finalized, and it still isn't finalized. Investigations are still on what has happened here and getting the facts from employees. I think the employees today are much more comfortable sharing information with us based on those changes. Before, they were concerned that they would be punished for speaking out. And now we had a very candid conversation in the other room about some of the changes that they needed to see. And I encouraged them and let them know how valued they are. But we all families. A lot of the details that I've learned in the last 10 days, I did not know about before. And when we did, immediately took action. We had the conversation that within minutes of learning what I learned, I knew what my decision would be in leadership changes. Took me a couple of hours to make sure that I could legally do what I wanted to do. But I think for the team here and the employees in the Department of Corrections, they're encouraged to see that action was taken and that we're continuing to do that.
We've heard from correctional officers that the two-man posts have now been reduced to one in certain areas, including pheasant land industries, where correctional officer Johnson was killed a while ago. When will those be brought back to two-man posts? Because those officers are telling me that they do not feel safe.
Well, so all of the requirements and staffing levels are being met at all times, but we would prefer to have more staff here, and that's why we're continuing to recruit them. These correctional officers here, though, are fully staffed at all times according to what is required and what normal staffing levels are at other facilities.
And how long do you think
changes for financial things that we can do in the short term to help them out? Also looking at long-term salary policy, which we had been undergoing for many months already, trying to see what we could do to stay competitive with the market. But there's also going to be changes in disciplinary actions. There's going to be changes in training, more training available. Many of them felt like they were serving with colleagues who didn't have enough training. So we'll be fixing that. But I do need them to feel confident in sharing concerns with me for me to change it. And I think that today we went a long ways in getting there.
How are they able to get in touch with you in the future for additional complaints?
Well, we have a completely different leadership team here that knows that that is the number one priority.
Part of the complaint touched on changes to the state employee health care plan.
Mm-hmm.
That was a change that you pushed
Mm-hmm.
this year. Do you hold yourself partially responsible for that and for the complaint?
The state employee health plan was digging a deficit every single year. We were backfilling that state employee health plan because it was a self-funding, self-sustaining health plan. And so for reasons to reform that, give better policies and make them available for state employees, give them more options, many people were discouraged to see that it also cost them more. We adjusted salary policy, and that's why you saw us give larger salary increases the last year than was required by law, was because we knew the health care plan, some of those policies may cost them more, but we also knew they were getting better plans, it was going to be budgeted for and paid for, and that it wasn't going to be something that was going to be unpredictable, and that we would get to the level where they would feel very comfortable with their health care plans. Any kind of change is hard, but these plans that they have the option from, and we talked about those today with all the employees, give them more options as a family, and we're adjusting salary policy to hopefully make them whole and even better.
Can you share specific misconduct that led to the firing of Young and Dreisky?
I can't. I will tell you that when I got the email, I took it extremely seriously and started an investigation right away. And when I received the preliminary report on that investigation about 10 days ago, we immediately took action.
What about the other two on administrative leave? They're still getting paychecks. Do you expect?
And that's because we haven't gathered all the facts as to what happened with their role in the situation.
And will any other administrators?
It's possible. I was very clear in the other room that everybody's being evaluated, every single person, and especially those in leadership.
And just here at this facility or throughout?
Throughout the Department of Corrections.
Did the preliminary report confirm the allegations of sexual harassment and changing schedules?
I can't speak to that.
How many vacant FTEs in this facility are there?
Not certain in this facility because it has changed. We actually had a couple of people that we discussed in the other room as well too. So it has been a changing position. And some are filling overtime, and there are quite a few down though.
BHR is kind of heading this investigation. We know that these issues have been going on for years. Is BHR being investigated?
No, they're not. BHR follows salary policy that is set by legislators. And
Sure,
we have.
I mean, if they've been receiving complaints over the years, none of this was on BHR's radar for the last years and years and years that this has been going on. I mean,
Complaints typically go up through the Department of Corrections, and the people that were aware of complaints that weren't taking action, that it was appropriate, they're being held responsible.
So BHR didn't see any of this until it started to make
It is not BHR's role to get into disciplinary action, to get into, unless it has to do with their specific employment job. But within shifts and overtime, those types of things, they can give recommendations to cabinet secretaries. They give what the law is and what the policy levels are at, and then different decisions get made in each agency and department.
I heard from a correctional officer who described missing watching his children open Christmas gifts for a number of years and was working instead. He was told that he would get paid double pay. Well, the shifts increased from 8 hours to 12 hours. When he received his paycheck, he got double pay for 8 hours, but not the full 12. How are you going to address these types of situations?
I heard that today for the first time. It will be fixed by next week.
Can you describe what the investigation will look like by your cabinet secretaries going forward? You said that you were going to hire or commission that third-party investigation. Has that happened? What does that look like?
Yes, we have other proposals that are out for individuals to come in and do a whole review. We should have those proposals back to us by next week, and then they'll be able to choose one that will come in and do a full comprehensive review on the Department of Corrections.
Is someone else having to do Secretary Gill's job while she conducts this investigation?
Yes, she is still engaged in her job, but also I have a policy staffer that is filling in as interim.
And with correctional officers lasting here for about 3 years, high turnover has always been an issue with our prisons. How do you propose correcting that? Through higher pay?
Yes, I think higher pay, but also make it a rewarding experience when they're exhausted, tired and missing their family and missing important events. I think that affects their ability to stay in a job long term. So fixing also shift schedules, our ability to give them some flexible work environments is incredibly important. But I don't want anybody to misunderstand me. This is a hard job. It's a hard job because they're literally putting themselves in dangerous situations that are unpredictable, and they need to be adequately trained and have the gear that they need, and they also need to know that they're appreciated. And I feel as though at times necessarily the individuals who work here have not known how appreciated they are.
Have you heard any reports about an officer who would retire and then does what is called double dipping, where they return on a part-time basis, they're receiving their pension and also getting paid as a part-time correctional officer?
That has not been brought to my attention on correctional officers, although I do know that there has been some precedent for that with other state employees.
So that has occurred?
It has in the past. I know there's, in years past, that has happened before. So it wouldn't be shocking to me to hear that that is happening, but I would have to look into it because I can't confirm or deny it.
Is that something you'd be in favor of?
I need to look at it and understand. You know, we have an incredible shortage here right now. So I think that people who would like to serve and work here, we should recognize the need to fill some of these shifts.
Sexual harassment allegations really are nothing new within the DOC system. There have been several federal lawsuits filed by people with accusations of sexual harassment. So what's different this time for you to step in and take action?
Are you referencing a specific accusation that
Well,
happened since
there
I've been
was
governor?
There was, I'm not sure if you were governor.
I know, that's what I don't know if there's been another one.
Previous deputy warden
Okay.
sued in Springfield. I know there was a correctional officer here that sued federally in the
Okay.
past.
Well, they're taken incredibly seriously by me. And there was no doubt in my mind, based on the preliminary report that I saw, that we needed to make changes immediately.
What about nepotism here?
Mhm.
I know there's one
I've heard-
married couple that works here. They work in different areas. They don't supervise one another. Is that an issue? Is that a problem?
It is being investigated. I've heard that, and it was part of the whistleblower's complaint. It was not brought up today with the employees, but I do have my team looking into it.
What about the bed bug situation? We're hearing it's quite extensive in Springfield and that it's also an issue here in Unit C.
Mhm.
Is that a part of a prison sentence, that someone should be locked in a cellmate with bed bugs and only provided a can of spray once a week that only keeps the bed bugs at bay for a few hours?
No, that's not an acceptable situation, and we have been working to address it, and they have not been successful so far. So we're going to have to take much more aggressive action.
Has anybody, I mean, you announced the 2 terminations and the 2 leaves of absences. Have there been other employees that have been terminated since this all started?
None that I
haven't been
could,
publicized?
none that I could confirm for you today.
Are you looking at complete prison reform overhaul of our entire DOC system? And how much would that cost?
Well, I have been looking since I've been governor at our facilities, which I think need to be replaced. You start looking at those facilities and getting them up to standards, that would build in efficiencies. It would ease staffing requirements. If you have new technologies and designs that make a safer environment, obviously with all the facilities we would need, it's a big bill to build new prisons and to do that. But that has been something that I have been studying and looking at for a couple of years now. Salary policy has, but now that we have this many different complaints that have been brought to my attention, we are looking at evaluating every single policy in DOC to make sure that we are doing a good job at training people, equipping them, putting them in safe positions, and allowing them to be successful in their jobs.
Can we me ask another
Sure.
question that's not part
I
of
think-
this topic?
I think
Is
so,
that okay?
yeah.
We heard that you will be going to Texas to visit, the folks that are on reserves
Mhm.
from Sioux Falls. Can you tell us about that, when you're going, and what your plans are?
I'm going to be going down to the border to see our National Guard troops that are stationed there. They were deployed there for 30 days. Make sure that we're confirming the situations they're in, that the state of Texas and the partnership that we have is being followed, and to make sure that they know we appreciate their service.
And another topic here, the Mike Lindell Cyber Symposium. When I interviewed Mr. Lindell, he said you were supportive in him booking it here in Sioux Falls and it taking place. Do you feel that the last presidential election was fair, and will you be attending his cyber symposium?
You know, Mike talked to me that he wanted to hold a cyber symposium. He would need about hundreds of hotel rooms, and I said, why don't you do that in South Dakota? We would love to host guests. We have been doing that at historic levels. So I don't know what my schedule is for sure. I'm trying to remember right when that is actually scheduled. I think it's in
10th,
August,
11th,
right?
August 10th, 11th,
Yeah.
and 12th.
Yeah. So I think that we have a duly elected president in the White House, that he was elected by the people. If there is fraud, we should know the facts.
How much of this report will you make public once it's done?
This report on DOC and the
Yes.
Well, we're going to look at what's in there. I hope everybody remembers that this is personnel policy. So it's very different when you're dealing with employees and there's legal requirements to releasing these types of investigations. But certainly, if it's appropriate, we will be.
For the correctional officers that were hoping that they would hear from you that maybe some emergency COVID funding would give them a boost in pay or help them with their insurance premiums, and they're disappointed today because they did not hear that from you, what hope do you want to give to them to hang on instead of applying for a job at a fast food restaurant and making just a little bit less and being in a much safer environment?
Well, I think you should go talk to them.
Okay.
You know, to be honest with you, we had a great meeting, and they know there are changes coming. I also told them there'll be short-term fixes and there's long-term fixes that need to happen. Salary policy has to be a long-term fix that we have to find ongoing revenue for. But I told them that's why you saw us last year with the extra revenue that we have, put money into trust funds. When you put money into trust funds, you have ongoing interest that you know you can count on year after year that can then be plugged into salary policy. That's why we paid off debt, was so that our ongoing budget would have more wiggle room to do reforms like we need to in salary policy. So they know that. They know that I'm going to get them as much immediate help as I possibly can. But the long-term salary policy is something that I need to be responsible and make sure that our budget still balances and that we do it appropriately.
And South Dakota is listed in the top 5 right now for managing debt and being in a very sound financial position. Is that something that's important to you, or could you speak to that?
No, it's incredibly important to me. It's also important to me that we stay competitive with our salary policy and that we have people in open positions, that especially where they're counting on a fellow staffer to have their back. They could be in dangerous situations, and that we also make sure that we have our inmates in safe situations too, and that we have adequate staffing levels. So we'll continue to put forward a proposal that is responsible both on the budgetary issues, but also specifically on the individuals who step up and serve in these roles.
Is there any chance that you put this guard on standby to assist here? I mean, is the staff shortage so depleted that could?
I think I have a couple of other options I want to look into the next couple of days, so stay posted. I think I would like to explore them before our guard. Our guard is the best in the world, and they've got several deployments coming up. And you have to look at the commitment they have to their communities, the commitment that they have to the national security issues that they serve, and so we want to make sure that we're using them appropriately.
Governor, you have released information in sort of other instances like the Minnehaha State's Attorney. Why not release that report or other information in this situation?
Because they're elected. And in other situations where you've seen investigations going on, they're accountable to the people of the state, and the people that elect them and vote for them deserve to have all the information. This is very different. This is an HR issue with an employee that works for the state, and there's different types of things I have to take into consideration with these types of investigations. And it's not optional. I hope you guys realize that. I have legal requirements that I follow. And the reason that I follow them is so that I don't expose the state to inappropriate situations where the state could end up liable for litigation costs. And so, I will give people as much information as I possibly can at the time it's appropriate and when it's appropriate.
A lot of the conversation seems to be around, staff, quality of work conditions and whatnot. Is there any of this have to do with staff and inmates? And I ask that because I think the deputy warden primarily handled programming for inmates and didn't manage a lot of staff. So, can you?
I can't speak to that.
I was gonna ask a similar question. What about the inmates and all this? I mean, you are talking about changes for DOC staff, but are you also looking at changes for inmates, better food, better conditions, treatment?
Well, we did put in air conditioning here. I hope everybody knows that cost us millions. The last time I came through the penitentiary, I was not happy with the environment that our inmates were in and our correctional officers were in. And so there is air conditioning in there, a day like today, in a brick building that's as old as the main building is, was incredibly unbearable. So my job is to make everybody's quality of life as best as I possibly can while they're here.
And is there air conditioning in Springfield?
I believe there is.
Okay.
The real issue was here, where the biggest challenges were, and so we got it done.
I received a report that there was not air conditioning in Springfield, and the description was scratching from the bed bugs and the heat and no air conditioning.
Oh, okay, let me check into
So-
that. Let me check into that. I wasn't aware of that.
Okay.
Warden Young oversaw more than just this facility, correct? He oversaw a couple other DOC facilities?
Well, they were tied to this facility, though. There's different, yes, units.
Okay.
Anything else?
I received a letter from a lifer here in the penitentiary, and he was hoping that South Dakota would take on more of a rehabilitation type of protocol, like the North Dakota prison. And the concern from this person that sent me the letter was saying, people come in, they do their time, but how are they going to make their life better? And I realize they need to reach out and accept that offer, but this lifer is hoping that there can be more rehabilitation, more skills to be learned, so that they can be productive and we don't have repeat offenders.
I agree.
What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. We've been discussing this and our ability to have, first of all, addiction counseling, mental health counseling, skills training. All of that is dramatically impacted by our facilities. And that's one of the things that's been driving that conversation is literally do not have rooms that I can do addiction counseling in. Do not have facilities where I can teach skills that they could use when they leave. So we have some here at this facility and a few at the women's prison. We've discussed and debated being able to add that at different campuses, but it is definitely a priority of mine. It's the big bill and the big cost of adding those. But I think what North Dakota is doing is fantastic. I've spent hours talking to the governor of North Dakota about it. He and his wife are passionate about their reforms that they've made, and I would love to see something like that facilitated here. We're just continuing to struggle with our lack of facilities to host that type of interaction. I would love it if we could get our legislators to start thinking about this as a priority as well.